I'm Crystal Faulkner with the CPA and Business Advisory firm of Cooney, Faulkner and Stevens. We're here today with Steve Stevens. Steve is the president of the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. And Steve, yesterday we just had great news, really great news on a national front in terms of jobs. The private sector added about 257,000 jobs in January, blowing analyst estimates away.
Terrific news, and it's really confirming what I think we feel and see in Northern Kentucky, that we are seeing jobs added, specifically in the manufacturing sector, which is very encouraging since it's the base of the economy that just drives so many other things. So that's great news, Crystal.
Well, and they say what happens here in the Midwest, so goes the rest of the country, right?
Yeah.
And you actually, as a part of the Northern Kentucky Chamber Initiative, you have a 2012 jobs growth plan that you're rolling out. Maybe you can share some of the details.
Sure. You know, the Chamber had heard from businesses for over a year or more, and really the "we need jobs" mantra had been heard so loudly that we said, you know, what can we do about that? So let's try to propose a real jobs package to the legislature. It's based on three ideas. The idea that first we need to retain the businesses that we have. After that, we want to make sure that we can allow those that are sitting here today the ability to expand. We know there's some people that want to, have the ability to, but they don't have all the tools. And then the final way is, how can we encourage the creation of new jobs, either by bringing companies here or actually starting new businesses, entrepreneurship being promoted, and things like that. So we have some ideas about that.
Well, and you're already doing a lot of stuff. Recently, you just announced the new UpTech initiative that's going on over at Northern Kentucky, as well as with the E-Zone in Northern Kentucky. But let's talk about some of the specifics of the plan. You know, one thing that we hear all the time from our client base in our CPA firm is that capital is just so tough to get in many cases. Is capital a part of your growth plan?
It absolutely is, and it's mostly in our package focused at those that are trying to start and to promote this entrepreneurship idea, but venture capital, angel investing. Today, the way that angel investors are treated in the Commonwealth is not as good as some of the other places. So they basically are holding on to their money, or they're putting it in other places. So our aim is to change that through legislation, and we have a pretty good piece of legislation currently now under consideration that we have high hopes will pass, but ultimately get some money into this economy.
Steve, we're out of time for this segment, but we're going to continue our conversation with Steve Stevens on WCPO.com, talking more specifically about some of the components of his 2012 jobs growth plan. So Steve, are taxes a part of your growth plan in terms of driving rates down?
Yes, absolutely. You know, our tax policies in Kentucky do need to be reviewed and changed, and so a lot of those things can be tweaked a little bit now, but there has been a commission that has been established, and some people probably will serve from Northern Kentucky to really do the review and ultimately propose the change that we really need to have. So that will happen. But in the jobs package, we're looking at making some tweaks to some current incentive programs that we have that right now affect manufacturing, but they could affect service and technology firms, which we have a lot of in our region. We think we're a great place and ripe for more. So let's try to put ourselves in a position so that we can help those people come here as well as grow.
You know, Steve, you mentioned the term region, and we hear a lot about regionalism, but the reality of it is you're on the Kentucky side of the river and Cincinnati's on the Ohio side of the river. Let's talk about what your thoughts are in terms of regionalism and, you know, the whole idea of trading companies, in essence poaching companies. I've heard that term. What's your view on that?
Well, I think, you know, the local economic development entities in this region have sort of created a truce several years ago that they really don't actively go and take one company from the other. What happens at the state level, however, is somewhat different, you know, and so what Frankfort and Columbus do may be different than what our locals have decided to do. Whatever happens, I think the bottom line is we want the jobs to stay in the region because it churns the regional economy. And so if a company goes from Cincinnati to Northern Kentucky or Northern Kentucky and vice versa, we want those people to retain their jobs here.
They're still eating in the same restaurants.
Absolutely.
They're still using the same services. So I agree with you. It's just, I can see though how from a taxpayer standpoint, using tax dollars to just encourage a company to jump across the river, for many people, it's just hard for them to digest that.
Absolutely frustrating, and I get that too. And so, you know, there won't be incentives offered from Kentucky that way to a very large degree. Basically, if somebody comes knocking, we'll answer the door and we will show them what we have available, but we won't go actively out there and do it.
Well, let's talk about economic performance, because certainly we just mentioned that on the jobs front last month we had great numbers. The unemployment rate ticked down to 8.3%, 257,000 new jobs around the country. How are we doing here in Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky in terms of economic performance?
I think we're doing better. You know, this past year we performed just slightly better. When you take the big measure that we look at it as an economy of performance, and that's gross domestic product, this region performed about 1.7% growth versus the country's 1.6. So we did better. But in the coming year, we predict that to go up to about 2.4%, which will be much better. Still not what we would consider robust like we used to see when we were up in 4, 5, 6%, but the fact of the matter is we're moving in the right direction.
That's absolutely right. You know, I heard a comment the other day that was talking about this new normal and what is the new normal, and I was very pleased when I saw the jobs report basically much higher than what many experts said the new normal was.
Sure.
And then going forward in 2012, I mean, do you see this trend continuing? Do you think we'll see a relapse a bit? Or?
No, what we really need though, Crystal, is people to continue to build confidence and to be able to go back to the thing you talked about earlier, spend their capital and get capital to put into their businesses. You know, 3,000 businesses were surveyed last month by Dun & Bradstreet and Pepperdine University, and basically 54% of them said, I feel more confident or somewhat more confident than ever that this economy is going to be good. But what would stop that in their minds is, first of all, too many regulations and not getting the capital. And so they look at, hey, if I get more capital coming in and there's some regulatory reform, this economy will grow, my business will grow.
Well, let's just hope that happens, Steve. Thank you so much for that great information and for being my guest.
Thanks.